Microsoft struck a major victory last week in its ongoing battle to acquire Activision Blizzard. According to the UK's Competition and Markets Authority, Sony is wrong about the impact the $67.8 billion acquisition would have on the industry, especially when it comes to Call of Duty as a franchise and its ability to severely impact console sales. The CMA is one of 3 major regulators worldwide whose approval Microsoft will need to see the deal through. You know the drill at this point. The other 2 are the European Commission and the FTC. The Activision deal has received pushback in some form from all 3. Initially, the CMA adopted Sony's argument that Microsoft would be incentivized to make Call of Duty Xbox exclusive, therefore hurting Sony's ability to sell PlayStations. Microsoft was quick to push back and responded by providing tons of internal documentation, requesting Sony provide internal documentation, and Microsoft even signed multiple 10-year agreements, promising Call of Duty content for all, for at least 10 years. In response, the CMA extended their deliberations on the deal and has now subsequently reconsidered its position. Last week on Friday, March 24th, the CMA released an updated provisional finding which stated, having considered this new evidence carefully, together with the wide range of information gathered before those provisional findings were issued, meaning the previous statement that they made on the deal, the CMA Inquiry Group has updated its provisional findings and reached the provisional conclusion that overall the transaction will not result in a substantial lessening of competition in relation to console gaming in the UK. A lot of provisionals in there. The statement continues, the most significant new evidence provided to the CMA relates to Microsoft's financial incentives to make Activision's games, including Call of Duty, exclusive to its own consoles. While the CMA's original analysis indicated that this strategy would be profitable under most scenarios, new data, which provides better insight into the actual purchasing behavior of Call of Duty gamers, indicates that this strategy would be significantly loss-making under any plausible scenario. And finally, the nail in the coffin here. On this basis, the updated analysis now shows that it would not be commercially beneficial to Microsoft to make Call of Duty exclusive to Xbox following the deal, but that Microsoft will instead still have the incentive to continue to make the game available on PlayStation. It's not clear what the crucial piece of evidence was that actually swayed the CMA outside of their statement here, but it's likely that that piece of evidence could win over the other regulators as well. However, it's not a complete victory for Microsoft. As the CMA pointed out, they are still highly wary that Microsoft's acquisition of Activision could still considerably harm competition in the cloud gaming space. Reportedly, the CMA will announce its official verdict on the deal at the end of April on the 26th. Other reports have suggested the European Commission will also vote in Microsoft's favor, but in order to get approved in the US, Microsoft still has to navigate a lawsuit issued by the FTC, which is set to play out over the summer. And then they'll still need to get the FTC to approve the deal. So it seems like we can see the light at the end of the tunnel for final decisions on this acquisition. We might be able to stop hearing about it in the news, but at the same time, that court case takes place over the summer, so we could very well be hearing about it still well into the holiday season, and that's just going to be what it is, I'm afraid. We'll try to keep you updated with everything relevant about the acquisition, but until then, that's where the video was supposed to end, I promise, except I was too busy editing that I missed this story that hit Axios today. Stephen Totilo has reported that 11 members of Congress are arguing that Sony is unfairly hurting Xbox in Japan. This is obviously very related to what we're talking about today, in which Sony has been arguing that Microsoft's acquisition of Call of Duty could hurt Sony's chances to sell PlayStations. Well, now a number of members of Congress from the Republican Party and the Democratic Party have written letters to the US Trade Representative, Catherine Tai, trying to bring attention to Sony's business practices. So there are 2 letters, one from the Democratic Party and one from the Republican Party. The Republican Party letter reads, "Today we write to bring your attention to the imbalanced Japanese video game market, which we are concerned may be a result of a discriminatory trade practice that could violate the spirit of the US-Japan Digital Trade Agreement. Specifically, the Republican letter alleges that Sony PlayStation has 98% of the high-end console market in Japan, signs deals designed to keep hit Japanese games from Microsoft's Xbox, and says such moves may, quote, violate Japan's antitrust laws, unquote. Furthermore, the letter says the Japanese government's effective policy on non-persecution when it comes to Sony appears to be a serious barrier to US exports, with real impacts for Microsoft and the many US game developers and publishers that sell globally but see their earnings in Japan depressed by these practices. There's also another letter from Democratic lawmakers, which is basically alleging the same things. As Axios points out, the US-Japan Digital Trade Agreement calls for the countries to enable, quote, non-discriminatory treatment of digital products, which would include video games. So with members of Congress paying attention to this, now potentially the Biden administration is going to need to investigate, these business practices that may be violating a trade agreement between the United States and Japan. To think all of this just because Sony didn't want Microsoft to buy Call of Duty. It's a really wild day for news. It's kind of ironic considering how much work Sony has been doing to try and convince regulators not to let Microsoft buy Activision Blizzard outright. Sony clearly has a market advantage in Japan over, Microsoft and Xbox. It gets weird when you throw Nintendo into the mix because obviously they're crushing everybody. But, Sony has been doing a lot of exclusive deals, timed exclusives with Japanese companies, specifically Square Enix. You can look at Final Fantasy VII Remake, Final Fantasy 16. So it's very interesting, very ironic that Sony has been pushing so hard to keep Microsoft from buying Call of Duty, claiming that it would give them an unfair advantage, when in fact they've been leveraging their exclusivity for a long time, for years, I guess, even at this point, if you really think about it. And now potentially there's going to be international politics over the whole ordeal, which is just, chef's kiss, mwah, of course. All right, that's going to do it for today. Thank you so much for watching. For more video game news and updates, stay tuned right here to Inside Gaming.